There's a new Netflix drama called 13 Reasons Why. It debuted this spring, and since its release, the show has drawn attention for its graphic depiction of suicide and other very depressing and adult topics.
Settle in, because I'm about to tell you the story of my life. More specifically, why my life ended. And if you're listening to this tape, you're one of the reasons why.
Well, now families of 2 teenage girls in the state of California are blaming the show for their daughters' suicides. Bella Herndon and Priscilla Chui, both just 15, apparently binge-watched the show and then hanged themselves shortly after. Do the show's creator deserve some blame for these deaths, or is that ludicrous? Gina Loudon is a psychology expert, and she joins us now. Dr. Loudon, thanks a lot for coming on. So I wonder if there's not a middle ground here between them. Maybe the show is totally reprehensible, which I'm very willing to believe, but not responsible for actions that people who watch it take. What's your view?
Well, I think that there's one thing that we need to note here that I think a lot of people are largely unaware of, and that is the fact that the part of our brain that controls the rational decision-making part, think of it like the remote control to an entertainment center, Tucker, that part of our brain isn't fully developed until sometimes in our mid to late 20s. So children, teenagers, up until their mid-20s are thinking largely based on their emotional center of their brain, making less rational decisions and less able to take in information and make good decisions. And so when you have a show like this that does 2 things, one is it says you can't trust adults, right? Adults are obtuse and they might not help you. But the second and perhaps more dangerous thing this show does is it equates suicide with revenge. Anyone who's worked in suicide in psychology knows that suicide is not revenge. Suicide hurts the people you love the most and doesn't hurt the people who hurt you. So the glorification of those 2 things in this series are extremely dangerous, and I do think that Netflix at least needs to be aware of this.
Well, I'm sure they are aware, but they don't care. I mean, you just made the point that young people have problems making rational decisions. This show wasn't made by young people. It was made by adults who hope to get rich from it. How would you evaluate their decision-making, putting something like this on the air?
I honestly don't think it's good, and I don't think they should continue with the 2nd season. So then what can be done? Well, of course, there are legal courses of actions from families when their daughters have committed suicide. There have been suicides in other countries that they believe are based on this series. And we've proven again and again in studies, Tucker, that the incidence of suicide increases about 20 times for those considering it when suicide is in any way depicted on television. And that's across populations, not just teenagers. So this is dangerous. And my question for Netflix would be, how many children are worth you continuing this show? I think it's a question that Netflix should take a serious look at.
I mean, suicide is obviously at the way far end of the continuum, but there's a lot of space between that and normal. And you got to kind of wonder, what's the effect on the majority of the viewers? Like, why would you put something like this on the air that is obviously subversive in a bad way? And why does nobody ever say anything about it? You know, there's this industry churning out all kinds of this garbage that poisons kids, and nobody ever says anything. Why?
Right, and targeting teen audiences.
Exactly.
I think they don't say anything because the edgier you can be, as far as Hollywood is concerned, and we've seen it displayed this week in grand style, the edgier you can be, the more you get ratings and eyeballs. And I want to give a caution, too, to the people out there who are wanting to fault the parents of these 2 girls that committed suicide, and that is it. I want you to know, if your children have a smartphone, they can get this series on Netflix without you even knowing it. And so there's no point, Tucker, in saying that we as a society can't be held accountable for imposing this sort of rhetoric that is really dangerous on the immature minds of people in their late teens to early 20s. It's very dangerous.
You know, I really feel partly at fault for not putting the names and photographs and email addresses of the producers of the show up on our screen. I really wish I had, because they deserve to hear from the public on this. Gina, thanks a lot.
And suicide hotline numbers, too. Thank you so much for covering this, Tucker.
Thank you.